Well, hello everybody. Good day. My name is Rick Danielson. I'm the CEO and principal of Danielson Applied Consulting, and my major emphasis is on helping laboratories be more efficient at what they do and just providing education. And in this case, today we're going to be talking about LIMS. And today I have a great guest who's going to be discussing their success in LIMS implementation and how it has helped their company. And today I have Sadie Zellum. Hi, Sadie.
Hi,
All
how are
right,
you?
I'm doing great. So Sadie, what can you give us maybe a little bit of background about yourself and what your company does and your role within the company?
Sure. So I'm Sadie Zellum. I am a digital process engineer within science, specifically within the NovaCare GBU. We are historically known for producing home and personal care products, agricultural products, and coatings, both for the industrial market as well as commercial and residential. So we historically used to be Solvay and split back in December to Syensqo. So we actually have 23 years of experience with the
Okay.
LIMS system, even though the company is less than a year old. So, we have a bunch of legacy sites that we've worked with for
Right.
quite some time.
Yeah. And
We have
yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
we have 20 sites globally and a number of just R&I labs throughout the entire company. So we're in North America, Asia, India, and Latam, so Latin America. So we're kind of spread out all over the place.
Right.
The LIMS system has helped us quite a bit with the standardization of our LIMS and lab management. So that's what we're here to talk about today.
Right. And so what a challenge. Global operation. I'm sure everybody doing their own thing, but yet as a company, you want to be able to have some level of standardization. What would have been some of the real hurdles and challenges that you were faced with on this?
Sure. So, I'll start from the beginning of what were the hurdles up front and why did we choose the system that we did? Being a global company, we wanted a standard way of working. We wanted all of our Syensqo sites to look, and operate very similarly. So we needed a system that we could utilize globally and kind of standardize across the board, but also have different languages. If we're working in
Oh,
Asia, having
yeah.
things in Mandarin, Portuguese, French, Italian, English. So we
Wow.
were looking for a system that would meet all of those needs. We had sites that were tracking things in Excel or Google Sheet, or still doing things on paper and faxing them. And we
Faxing.
needed
Oh,
something.
my goodness.
Yes,
Faxing, really? Okay. Yeah.
faxing. And
All
so
right.
that was recent. I had
Yeah.
come across a site that they said the way they communicate their lab data back from the control room between the lab was through a fax. And
Okay.
I have never even operated a fax machine. Maybe that speaks
Oh,
to
no.
age, but yeah, I've never operated a fax machine. Um, so with that being said, we needed something that we could roll out globally, that we could do remotely. So I'm based in Pasadena, Texas, but I needed
Okay.
to be able to help my colleagues in Asia or in India or in Europe or Latin America. And LIMS allowed us to do that. So,
Right.
it was a web-based standardized tool that we could set up our raw material testing, in process testing, and finished product testing. One
Hmm.
of our requirements was we wanted real-time feedback. If I put something in that was out of spec, or maybe I even just mistyped a number, I
Right.
wanted it to flag it to me. And there are color codings in the LIMS system that I can immediately see, hey, this is a little bit weird,
Okay.
as well as SQC analysis. So with our lab techs, our lab managers, and our engineers on site, SQC analysis was very important to us. How are we trending compared to some of our statistical rules in place, and having flags based off of that? And that was something built into the tool that we have trained our sites to use,
Hmm.
as well as just ownership overall. So we have a lot of regional quality managers that are obviously interested in their region's site's quality metrics.
Right.
So being able to not have to be on site to look at that data or pull a
Hmm.
bunch of files from a filing cabinet or request the information, they have a login, they can pull all of that information for their sites, as well as connectivity to other systems. My background is I'm a chemical engineer. I love data, particularly process information.
Okay.
So I want to see how my reactions are running and how my quality is compared to that. So what are my process conditions? What are my quality results? And being able to pair that information. So being able to export that data out of LIMS into other systems was very important to us as well. The last piece that I was talking about that kind of ties back into the faxing, one of our kind of key things that our sites have been asking for is how can we better communicate quality information? They were either, like I said, faxing it over, having a phone call, or they were using a radio to communicate lab results back to the control room and any adjustments that they needed to make or actions they needed to take on the batches. And that poses a lot of areas for things to go wrong. You could have a miscommunication. You could say the wrong thing. You could write the wrong thing down. You could take an action on a batch that maybe wasn't the correct one. So within the LIMS tool, we had developed what we call a control room dashboard. That whenever you put the data in real time, it populates a dashboard of the most recent data just for that specific site. And the control room can see it. It has about a 60 to 90-second refresh rate, but they can see that information and reference it. So there's no miscommunication. They don't have to kind of ping pong back and forth for a call if they forget or they forget to write it down, or maybe they misplaced the piece of paper. It's on a screen right in front of them for them to be able to see and take action on. So it has really helped with the communication piece as well. And that's one of the more exciting things that at least our operators and engineers have wanted to be included on and have implemented at their sites.
Right. So spread out globally, like you said, and so again, just on a personal level, you trying to work with these labs and other people around the globe. So your hours must be a little crazy, I'm guessing.
They are. And so, like I said, I'm the digital process engineer for the entire GBU. So before I even had taken on being the project manager for the implementation and just kind of sustaining the ways that we work within LIMS, I was already working globally. I was very accustomed to having the 10 p.m. phone calls with China and the 6 a.m. phone calls with Europe.
Okay.
But it really wasn't bad. When you have a standardized tool, you can have a standardized training.
Right.
And typically within our sites, we have at least one English-speaking person that they can do a translation or train other people. Mm-hmm. And the tool itself was relatively intuitive, right? We would help them set up some of their matrices and take them through a training, and then we would allow them to do the last 10% to train themselves.
Okay.
But we would work hand in hand with them, and it would typically take anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, depending on how many different sample types we had to set up. And from there, maybe they would come back with, hey, can we get a refresher training here and there? But it was more of a 15-minute conversation.
Okay.
So the rollout itself wasn't terrible. I will say I am the bottleneck. My time and me and the support group that I have, it's only 2 of us working on this for 20 sites.
Yeah, so just taking just a little bit of a step back. So when everyone decided to put in a system, what were some of the things that you had to do to basically, get everybody on board? What did you have to upgrade anything at the various locations? I mean, even back at the beginning, I'm sure you all realized this is going to be a task. What did you have to go through to kind of like just get over that first hurdle to, yes, we need a system that unifies?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and it was learning as we went, right? Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. When we had started the rollout process, it was, who needs it the most, right? Who has a lot of products and they need a quality management system, and who has a good infrastructure in place, being support from the site, who has a good lab system, and it has an open mindset, right? Changing the way of working isn't always accepted. It takes a mindset shift. So we were looking for people who had that open mindset. And from there, once we proved the technology, the tool sold itself. At this point, like I said, I'm the bottleneck. I have sites coming to me asking, when can we get this? This would be very helpful for us.
Right.
One of the things that we have learned is you have to have a good network infrastructure. So you're transferring a lot of data. It is web-based. One thing that we noticed was, if you're going to load a mass amount of data, you have to have a good network connectivity and a bandwidth.
Yes.
Some of our control rooms are pretty far away from our labs. The labs might be in an area that they're only running on Wi-Fi, and the Wi-Fi wasn't great.
Mm-hmm.
Or we were using tablets to do mobile data entry, and the tablets didn't have Wi-Fi. So currently, right now, one of the things that is our barrier to further implementation is increasing that network infrastructure. Some of our sites are very old, so the sites are eager to use it. It's just, we don't want it to take forever to load. And it wasn't just LIMS, it was every other software that we wanted to use. I always tell people that I'm not patient waiting for things to load. I'm used to that 5G connection and 1 gigabit of data transferred, pretty quickly. That if I have to wait for something, I typically don't want to use it. So I don't push my sites to do that either.
And at each site, do you have like a LIMS champion, somebody that is, or is it completely remote?
No, so we have lab managers at each one of our sites. So typically within our manufacturing sites and even our R&I facilities, we have a lab manager. And then a series of lab techs who actually do the sampling and sometimes even operations. But the lab manager, or even sometimes the technical manager, is kind of the admin for that site. They can do the request for new users, or they can set up new products and matrices and in-process testing and things like that, as well as the final approvals of the quality data itself. So it's not completely remote. Some of them we do have shared resources at some of our smaller sites, but for the most part, there's at least one owner at the site who can kind of come back to Joe and myself and say, hey, this is kind of what we're seeing.
Yeah. And so when you were selecting your LIMS, were there certain things that you were looking for that, it's like, hey, we don't have this now, but these are the tools that we want to start instituting and bring those in as well?
Yeah, so there were a few things. Like I said, the real-time SQC analysis was huge. We had looked at a few other programs that they'd say, yeah, we can do SQC reporting, but you had to export the data. There wasn't just a nice little icon that you could click on and it popped up a beautiful SQC chart. So the real-time SQC charting, connectivity into different systems, like I talked about, things like SAP, document attachments as well as document generation for things like C of A data, or doing calibrations. We have a lot of instruments on site. We wanted to put all of the calibration data into LIMS. We also wanted to be able to schedule those calibrations in LIMS instead of opposed to like a maintenance schedule, because it really wasn't maintenance that had to do it. It was all localized at the lab itself, as well as some inventory tracking, right? We wanted to, if you needed lab supplies, we didn't want to put that with raw material inventory or packaging. Again, it was all central to the lab itself, as well as just it was web-based and the mobility of the tool. If I wanted to pull up LIMS on my phone because I was having a problem, through my VPN, I can pull up LIMS and sign into it, right? And it's not, I don't have to be on a network to be able to do that.
Thank you very much on all that. So what do you see moving into the future with now that you have this in place? This is, quite an undertaking. It's out there globally. You have all these different people, all these different cultures, everyone kind of having their own different languages. The data is data, right? But the communications. So how do you see the company working with this in the future?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's a few things. I had mentioned earlier on that we split back in December from our legacy company. Since then, we have acquired and merged with a few other companies. So now I have added them to my roadmap to get them integrated into LIMS.
Okay.
But aside from just integration and standardizing the tool, we're also increasing the ways of working. So I had mentioned using a mobile tablet to be able to do the data entry. So instead of having to write it down on a piece of paper and go back into the offices, they can just insert the information on a tablet and have it immediately go to the operators and release their C of A's and things like that. The other portion is using advanced analytics. So I talked about pairing your quality data with your process information. One of the things that I do, I'll call in like my full-time job, is we do a lot of advanced analytics and advanced process controls
Okay.
diagnostics. And it's using that analytics to optimize our process, to be more predictive in how we're running our processes as opposed to reactive or even making real-time decisions, right? We want to be able to predict the quality that we're getting out of our systems based on our process conditions. And having that historical data helps train those models, right? The other is just ways of working at the operations and lab level, using things like barcode scanning to fill in your generic information. So it's saving time to allow our both operators and lab techs to focus on other things. We're all very busy. A lot of us are wearing multiple hats. Really optimizing the process and saving time where we can makes a huge difference.
Right.
Some of the other things are tying in instruments. So a lot of our instruments are very intelligent, tying them directly into LIMS so that we don't even have to do the data entry. It just comes directly from the instrument. So
Okay.
these are all things that have been available for the last several years. We really just haven't gone after them. Now we have a really good team in place. We're kind of redeveloping from the ground up for a new company. And there's a lot of emphasis on quality. And there's a lot of, what do I want to say, a lot of support to do new things. And kind of our new tagline is "We are explorers." And they're asking us to think outside the box.
Okay.
How can we be better? How can we optimize? And quality does not get missed in that. So they've been very receptive to a lot of these ways of working and just making improvements overall.
All right. All right. Well, I want to thank you for joining me today for this discussion. And I want to thank everyone who's also tuned in today to talk with or to hear Sadie's experiences with her LIMS. Sounds like a huge project. I wish you the best of fortune with getting everything up and running and working. I can speak from personal experience as a lab director that the level of, if you can take advantage of all the levels of automation, the efficiency, the being able to reduce the amount of errors that just occur that are just huge, time sucks out of a person's day-to-day job. Having a system like this in place just is such a huge advantage for a company overall, big or small. I mean, you're a huge company. I'm coming from a very small company aspect, but just the value you get out of it overall is I found to be huge. Yeah. So again, I want to thank you, Sadie, and I want to thank everyone who joined us today. And if you would like more information on the LIMS, you can contact our sponsor today as Confiance, and they're at www.confiance.io. And so that I would like to thank everyone, and everyone have a good day. Bye.